Excited to have Rob Ratchinsky here with us for an hour. Rob is CEO and founder of Engage Mobilize, venture-backed digital field management company based here in Denver. As we mentioned before, or I've mentioned before in previous days, one of our fellow alums, Jim Thorson, is an investor in Engage, and we also have Jim and another one of Rob's colleagues later today in a session. Rob, earlier in his career, worked with Anadarko. So he's got a deeper background in oil and gas, and he's going to talk to us today about how they have plans to expand their footprint into renewables, bringing the same type of digital management solution to the renewable asset sectors. Rob is active conference speaker, at least pre-COVID, which is where I initially met Rob in Houston earlier this year in person. And then he also participates on various podcasts, is pretty vocal about his views on what's happening in oil and gas on the digital side. He has a lot to share with us today. I would encourage our group to ask as many questions as we can fit in, and we'll get this going. Rob, take it over.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that, Mike. Appreciate the kind words in the intro. Yeah, super excited to be chatting with the group today. For me, selfishly, I'm looking to get some pretty candid feedback on where we kind of plan to head. Agenda-wise today, I just wanted to share with you guys sort of a little bit about my background, the impetus for setting up the technology that I'm going to kind of explain, and then, yeah, what we kind of see as the future here at Engage, both sort of nationally here in the US, but also internationally from the renewable side. We do see a ton of opportunity sort of outside of our borders. I myself am actually from Canada and studied environmental economics a long time ago, and did a sort of my thesis on sustainability, and found myself though in the oil and gas sector early in my career. So with that, let me jump over to my presentation and we'll get started.
Yeah, you can just grab control by clicking share screen.
Do that on it. So everybody got a good view of that?
Yep, you're good.
So data is new oil. Yeah, as we kind of step through this, you guys, I want to be clear that the reality is, you know, we use this a lot coming out of the oil and gas sector, and the transformation that is taking place in energy, not only in oil and gas, but I think in renewables as well, is all structured and centered around picking up new edge data points that were not available due to just, you know, hardware constraints, 4 or 5G constraints on getting data back from disparate locations out in the field. And where I started my career was actually on the finance side. So I broke into oil and gas, as Mike mentioned, with Anadarko in the early 2000s. I spent some time working with the business development groups, the finance side, Wall Street communication, really getting a feel for what the deal structures looked like in oil and gas. Obviously, with a company like Anadarko, we didn't act on a whole ton of deals, but I saw a whole bunch into what the expectations were for the shareholders and for the sort of VP level, if you will, within a medium-sized independent. And I had a huge step change in 2008. I jumped over to the pure operations side, joined up with a consulting firm, and founded another consulting firm actually on the drilling and completion side in oil and gas. And this was during the time up to, you know, running up to $100+ per barrel oil. We did fantastic. However, working offshore or working on location with these guys, the only way that we were collecting data was, was stopwatches and honestly notepads and trying to aggregate data into Excel and try to develop new data points. And so when everything tipped over and the industry kind of crashed out in 15, my co-founders and I kind of looked at ourselves and said, we're going to be out of work for a little bit. And we see this huge disconnect between what the expectations are for the shareholders and how that data is getting back to sort of the financial departments, the corporate departments, and the business intelligence that's sort of surrounding those data points that were very lagged. So we knew we were going to be out of work for a little bit, being consultants, and we thought, let's figure out how to get in tech. Let's figure out how to get an app in the Apple Store at the simplest level. And so, founded by some engineers and some oil and gas guys, not tech guys. I don't code. I don't pretend to even understand half of what my engineering team is telling me. But we set out to do that in 16. Fast forward to today. We were able to garner logos pretty quickly. We did field trials in 17 and had some pretty powerful logos commercially coming out of 17. We had to get funding pretty early to support our enterprise clients. Engage is a solution that is touching the entire financial workflow and digitizing it at all the way down to the field level. So we are touching operations, accounting, finance, all the way up to the C-suite is interested in the data that we're procuring. And we were, expected to support our clients like an SAP or an Oracle. And we had to make moves to raise capital quickly. We did that in Cottonwood Venture Partners out of Houston. They are an awesome team. And we've been, I'll say, blowing and growing ever since. Actually, fast forward to today in Houston, I was actually down speaking with our team regarding about our entrance into the renewable side, what that's going to take from a capital push, resource allocation standpoint on our side, and especially if we want to take this international. So I just had a few things here sort of regarding our industry. And I think it dovetails quite nicely into what's happening on the renewable sector, especially with ESG situation. Some of the statements that BP and other large oil companies are making about going zero footprint in the next, 20, 30 years. People always ask, why did Engage move so quickly into the arena? Why were they able to kind of disrupt? And the truth is, yeah, we have an awesome team. This is a cool idea. But the reality is timing. The LPs and the investment side of this community, I think, just got fed up with the business intelligence on what was happening to the dollars and to the capital inputs without really getting any feedback from their operators that they're investing in. And so as we kind of entered the market, via a significant downturn, there was already pressure to start to move some of this data in a more, functional and efficient way back to corporate. And so we were able, like I said, to get off the ground commercially very quickly. You guys can see just some of the numbers here are in the billions for savings for the digital transformation that's taking place within the industry. I can sit here and say that we're engaged as a part of that story. We are saving millions of dollars for our clients, depending on their size. And as our technology expands and becomes, even creating more visibility and more transparency, we're even going to see those that ROI on those dollars go up. So what did we solve? You guys, it's amazing out there that when we discovered oil in Texas in the early 1900s, that we were transacting on little pieces of paper. Circa 2016, when we started this, we were still transacting. One thing that changed is we had carbon copy paper, so we could do triplicates now and make 3 pieces of paper that had to be input into systems digitally, whether that's Excel, accounting systems, invoicing systems. it's just a mess. I always tell a story when I was working on the drilling side that we used to have to walk around the basin in Utah and do sort of a cleanup every year, and all we were picking up were paper tickets. They were associated with revenue, oil pickups, welding tickets, crane tickets, you name it, just littered across Utah, and garbage bags full of them. And each one of those tickets actually is a transaction and equals either AP or AR to somebody. So we saw that and said, let's just fix this. So at the bottom level, Engage is digitizing the transactions, taking them off of paper. That's everything from the compliance side to the financial side to the permitting side, anything where they were having to fill out forms on location out in the middle of nowhere. We wanted to build a program that could digitize that and associate it back for audit and for validation. I'll kind of stop right there. Does anybody have any questions about high level what the technology is doing?
Hey, Rob, a lot of the larger corporations have like an order to cash, like process optimization where they're trying to digitize, or they've been trying to digitize over the past 5-10 years. Can you speak to like what you were trying to target that was different than that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there is a big push, you know, in the order to cash space, not only in oil and gas. I think other industries have done it much better than we have in retail or, you know, even the defense side. But the reality is we wanted to take it one step further and not just digitize the process, but create validations and automation that took the human element out of the equation, if you will. This could get all the way to sort of a blockchain solution, if you will. But the reality is we can just use new data that's collected out on the edge, whether that's with an IoT device, whether that's captured by a person or a crew, and use that to skip over the approval processes in the order to cash transaction. And then, you know, that's touching everybody. So we are moving oil on the revenue side. We are moving a whole bunch of services on the expense side without a human approval process. And so what we present as data back to our clients is where those breaks are taking place. If you don't pass go, you don't pass validation, then we present that data to those approvers and those engineers and let them decide if something looks awry or if we just need to add data back into the set so that it maintains structure basically as it rolls up to the finances. Does that answer that?
Hey, Rob, this is Mike. Maybe if you could just share some basic public facts about capital raised, maybe number of customers, whatever you're comfortable sharing.
Yeah, so you guys, today we have raised $5.5 million into last August. Like I said, our lead there amongst some of the pro forma and legacy investors was Cottonwood Venture Partners out of Houston. If you guys are not familiar with them, they are a firm that is focused on, I'll call the above ground technology in oil and gas and everything kind of surrounding the digital transformation. We are currently hunting a strategic partner, possibly on the renewable side, to get a seat at our table. And right now, we're kind of at a decision point in between doing sort of a growth round, you know, let's say call it a series A1, or if, you know, the partner makes sense, actually jumping right into a B round right now. Although we do have a runway to get us into late next year, at this point, we want to throw some gas on the fire and start to expand our footprint into the into other pieces of the energy sector.
How many people do you have at your firm?
Right now, we are about 40 full-time employees and about 45 with some of the contractors working on the engineering side. And of course, our lawyers and our accountants and all the support staff outside of that.
And just to be clear, you said 5.5 million?
Yes.
Okay, I thought you said billion. I'm like, really?
Well, that's probably 2-3 years out, but we're shooting for it.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. No, and I mean, with respect to that comment, within the oil and gas industry, at least, we kind of sit alone right now. That's why it's exciting times at Engage. This last downturn, this sort of kick in the shin to the industry again, has provided a ton of opportunity for Engage. We've never been busier. There's never been more pressure from the LPs and the PEs to ask their boards to adopt technology versus people. I hate to see that because I have friends and colleagues that I'm watching getting laid off, losing their businesses after 15 years, But over here in Engage, this has just turned into an opportunity because we handle so much of the financial sort of aspect to their business, creating a new level of business intelligence. There's just a flurry of activity of folks looking at this. And that again is me saying, this is not just happening with our economy and energy. This is happening in oil and gas. This is happening across the energy space. And so we want to make sure that we take advantage right now of starting to work on the flip side. And in a lot of cases, it could be our own clients already, right? When you look at a lot of these companies, they're energy companies. They're not oil and gas companies. So our entrance might even come through one of our current clients. And I guess back to Mike's question, we have clients, all the way from an operator or midstream, with 13 terminals and 13 wells, up to major players in the Permian with 95,000 plus well sites, midstream assets, downstream assets that are leveraging the solution today. And those rollouts and implementations are in full effect. Some of them taking 12 months plus, just depending on how many business assets that we are getting entrenched in. I'll give a little bit more color, you guys. I'll run you through a real quick example. And let's talk about this from an oil and gas or from a renewables standpoint. There's a service tech out there. Some work needs to be done. Let's call it preventative maintenance. Let's call it any kind of maintenance. Let's say we need a pickup, a drop. The Engage platform uses IoT data to predictably dispatch that work, sets up a work order, sets up a job ticket, pushes it out to a third party or an internal provider for that operator, and basically gets them on the move. We then track them just like an Uber or a Lyft would along their journey throughout the process. When they get to the work site, wherever they're going to be doing that, we are timing them against the contracts that are in place in the system. So they're not going to be entering in, how long they were there, the consumables that they're using. This is all going to be set up on the front end so that we can tie back into accounting. We also force e-forms into the native device. So if they need a permit to do the welding job that they're doing, we will ask them within the situation to fill out that permit before they get to work. That is now captured on that digital ticket and auditable in eternity, if you will. Compliance docs, safety docs, anything that you need to get back to the state or the feds regarding timing of activities, with emissions testing or whatever it might be, getting all that set up and pushed out to these guys. And then as they complete their jobs, they sign off on it. And then we run it through a series of pretty simple algorithms that test the data for validity. Does this pass the sniff test? And if it does, let's start to speed up the capital. Some of these transactions we're talking about on these large capital projects can be in the hundreds of millions for one service provider. And factoring that capital back even by 14 days or 7 days is a big deal to everybody's bottom line. So if we can automate that process on these capital projects or maintenance, on the expense side for maintenance, the deal structures are going to look different. If you don't have to wait 90 to 120 days to get paid, you may be able to de-risk some of the work that you're doing for your clients and push in some, we'll call them discounts, but the reality is they're not. It's just discounting the capital back into a different bank account. And we're doing that, like I said, end-to-end on the revenue side and also end-to-end on the expense side. So that is quintessentially our Ferrari, and we're doing that for very large corporations here in the US already. Does that all make sense? Kind of jumping over into the renewable side is we believe the opportunity is as big, and from an investment standpoint, strategically very important to engage. You know, when we were raising capital, it was tough. You know, we weren't able to just, like everybody else, look at this awesome technology. Let's chase some Silicon Valley money. Let's get out to New York and kind of shop this. That's what's impressive about CVP is they saw this digital transformation taking place and kind of jumped on that. And so we found in a partner somebody who understood the industry and what was happening and sort of the level of transformation that was taking place. However, as we jump into the renewable side, there's going to be a ton of interest from a much broader set of parties. And I think we need to do that in the current environment because people are scared of the oil and gas industry right now, not only for, you know, all the M&A activity that's going on, but just in relation to investing in tech. It seems like a little bit of a gray area. I sit here and can tell you it's not. Oil and gas isn't going anywhere. The reality is just the perception of it is in kind of a dark place right now. And so timing for us is good. We were looking to move into renewables anyway, and the market is huge. For those of you guys out there too, just to give you an idea of the oil and gas side, it makes up 24% of the total capital spend in the US. Renewables, not even close. However, still a giant market. And controlling all those transactions at the bottom level is what we're aiming to do. The technology itself could easily be rebranded. You know, we have some branding on the oil and gas side, of course. That's the language that we speak very well. But as we bring on our renewables team, we're excited to make this transition into, you know, solar and wind and any other large capital projects that need transparency on the build side and then to be maintained long term. I did mention this before. Right now, we are leading this space in oil and gas. There are a few companies out there that are focused on, you know, one or two service types, you know, water, let's say, or frac sand or something like that. We have over 250 different service provider or service types being tracked on our platform, and thousands of companies. So we have on our platform a client base, which is your Chevrons of the world. We just inherited Chevron as a client with a Noble acquisition. And then you have our, what we call our user base, the non-paying base. And that's all the techs, all the guys out in the field actually swinging the hammer, turning the wrench. And there's, you know, thousands of them and thousands of companies involved, everybody from Halliburton down and Baker down to a mom and pop who owns one truck and will be sent out to do some work in the middle of nowhere on a midstream line or what have you. We, with our current sort of contract setups as of late, are actually seen to our clients as kind of partners. And we want to do this on the renewable side as well. As you know, with this tech that touches so many people's workflows, you know, when you're the CAO signing off on this, the COO signing off on this, the CTO signing off on this, we really have to be seen as that trusted partner that's going to be able to be pretty agile into leveraging all the other technologies that these companies have already invested in and making sure that we can integrate. Because of the transformation that's taking place right now, we're truly pioneering a lot of those connections. You know, when you guys go out and buy Salesforce as a tool, you basically write them an email and say, it'd be awesome if it talked to Jira or to Slack or to whatever, and they can just turn that on for you. For those of us that are founding, you know, in the digital space and oil and gas, none of the connections have been made. So over the past year, we've spent a lot of dollars and resources connecting to Oracle, SAP, you know, all the major players that are going to be on the renewable side as well, and creating APIs all over the map with the large service providers for our operators. And that's really a big part of the story and really the challenging part of the story, because it takes a pretty big lift when none of the connections have been previously made. I mean, you guys, the technology that's being leveraged in a lot of cases is still on-prem. I mean, they're just getting away from like there's servers that are in the building, and we thought that was going to be a barrier for us. It just has not been. I mean, everybody's moving towards the cloud, but it's a lift, and especially a lift for companies like Engage that require a significant amount of resources to tap into, Oracle's APIs and many others. Obviously, you guys know here, these are what we'll be targeting: solar, wind, hydro. The biofuels is interesting me. The supply chain that's associated in that area specifically really presents nice to the Engage technology. On top of us controlling a lot of the work that's being done, we're also controlling a ton of the logistics and supply chain behind the scenes, i.e. the trucking, the movement of the goods, the movement of the equipment on and off location. But with biofuels, there's a ton of logistics that go into play after the fact and leading up to production of that energy. Few quick facts that you guys are probably on at least on this call pretty aware of here. Like I said, almost $250 million. It's going to be spent on the solar side, growing up to 2026. This industry continues to expand pretty much as rapidly as they can deploy capital, honestly. Same thing in wind, hydro, all of this, you guys. We want to get in on what I won't call the front end of this, but the renewable industry is controlled by a few major players, Siemens, GE, a lot of international firms that have started sort of investing, I guess, a little earlier than the US market, I guess, has. And we just see this as a crazy opportunity that cannot be ignored. Again, just some more statistics. In 2018, almost $50 billion compared to $11 billion back in 2005. So the numbers are pretty staggering on how fast the capital projects and programs are growing. And again, we just don't see that stopping. You guys probably saw the news from Google coming out and saying that they're I think that strategically it's a good move for them, but strategically they're not going to work with oil and gas operators anymore. And so Amazon has actually seen that as a pretty big opportunity to jump in. Google, strategically it wasn't a huge blow to Google, but Amazon has now put teams in place to make sure that they're supporting technologies like ours and the oil and gas industry as we transform the renewable sector as well. You guys, as well as anybody, understand that BP will probably end up being one of the largest owners of wind farms in the US, just simply because they do have the ability to get at the capital and the debt to fund these massive large-scale projects. There's a big piece of this, you guys, on the compliance side that I want to touch on, and this is really important to Engage as we look to expand our footprint internationally. The environmental, health and safety, and compliance piece of this is going to be a big part of the story. We operate out of Colorado. Even the rules this year on the LDAR side and with some of the legislation that was passed really put our clients into a spot to have to use a technology like Engage. However, when you talk about Canada or Australia or Norway, these countries are way ahead of the US on the compliance side. And so as we look at our product roadmap and Engage, it's very important not only to develop the data capture that is needed for compliance, but almost to become the client services and consultants to our clients and those government entities that are pushing down some of this, and kind of sharing the metadata and sharing the market data within sort of a geo-located basin or area. And so that's pretty exciting for us as well. We're really trying to get to the level of having conversations with the Department of Transportation, the Department of Energy, and making sure that they have a good understanding on exactly what Engage can do for the ecosystem and what we're planning to do internationally as well. That's me, you guys. That's Engage in a nutshell. Looking forward to meeting you guys, networking with you, and excited to take on questions, if any.
Awesome. Great presentation. Carson, you're up.
Okay, Rob, hi, how you doing? Thanks for the presentation. I used to be an ERP guy, enterprise resource planning guy for IBM a long time ago. So some of this was very interesting to me in that I guess we would have called what you guys are making a bolt-on thing for the ERP things, like you said, Oracle, SAP, et cetera. And I guess I was kind of struck by, 20 years ago we were doing this stuff. I figured they would have wouldn't have so many manual processes. I assume that's because profits were so good in the oil and gas industry, they didn't really need to worry about squeezing all the margins. But anyway, looking at your customers, so it looks like you're being successful in the oil and gas side, and you plan to follow them or use them as a platform to get more into the renewable side as they go into renewables. Now, do you plan to go beyond energy with this? I mean, do you see applications beyond energy? Because I mean, it seems like it could be.
It's a great question, and I appreciate, especially your background in IBM. We actually had, we were brought into an IBM accelerator probably about 18 months ago, and had the opportunity to present to sort of the senior exec level on what we were doing. IBM actually up in Canada built a similar application for Husky oil and gas that was costing them a couple million a year just to maintain. So they were very interested in what we were doing and sort of the agile methodology that we had deployed. But yeah, kind of close to IBM. I think that company specifically, obviously, as you know, just did an amazing job in getting into their accounts and providing technologies, especially on the financial side, for kind of driving that transparency. And to your point, what happened in oil and gas? Like, why was it forgotten? And, people look to they're just making too much money. That I can get behind that a little, but I think the reality of it is that they were protective of their data. They're run by, up until just recently, a lot of the old guard just was not interested in the transformation. They were fine with the processes. To your point, they were making enough money to continue on the way that they were transacting. And, fast forward to 2020, there's a whole ton of pressure being put on them, and some lights being and magnifying glasses being opened up and saying, you guys actually don't know how much money you're spending or even why you're spending it. Please develop technology or go out and find technology that will help that. But yeah, it's the challenging part for us is connecting to those services that IBM provides and getting on the IBM cloud and getting all that organized so that some of these tools that these major multinational companies are already leveraging can also feed off of our clean data coming out of the field.
Okay. Well, I mean, I guess what I'm thinking is, as you get known by SAP or Oracle or whoever's still out there, because a lot of companies have merged or disappeared, that may give you opportunities because they'll go to a customer and the customer will say, we need your software to do this. And their core software of SAP, for example, will do 90% of it, but there's some specific application they need. And if they know you exist, then they might say, well, yeah, and our bolt-on would be, you guys. So Engage.
A nice middleware, right? And we're also going to be leveraging actually here in the near term some new partnerships with Accenture, Deloitte, the McKinseys of the world. That will be, they have already developed those partnerships like IBM over the last 20 years, and those, both sectors, the renewable side and the oil and gas side, spend a whole ton of money and trust those folks to bring in solutions that can scale and can create efficiencies. And so I think at Engage we are going to have to depend on some of those relationships that have already been forged and the expertise with these rollouts. I mean, we can't get out of our own way right now with respect to trying to figure out how we take a potentially new client, Chevron, and roll them out globally. I mentioned we have a 40-person shop. That's probably not going to do if we're going to roll out the 50 business assets worldwide that Chevron operates. So again, why we're looking for new partners and why we're really excited about kind of the opportunity that has recently been presented.
All right. Well, thanks.
Appreciate that.
Okay. All right. Joe, you're up.
Rob, really appreciate the presentation and can relate. I worked on with some embedded Accenture folks at Halliburton and creating DSO solutions and working capital solutions for supply chain and OTC. And I have a question about kind of the business models that obviously it was in Halliburton's or a service company or any service contractor's provider's best interest to try and reduce the DSO, days sales orders outstanding, and improve their working capital position. But from what I understand, they're not paying customers on the platform. It's the operators that are driving it, that are the paying customers. And so what do you think is the most important value proposition to the operator? Is it that environmental kind of risk reduction or risk consciousness type of perspective that they get from using the platform, or is it something else?
I think, when you think about Engage, and a lot of people try to put us in a corner of, you're digitizing, you're digitizing a field ticket or a paper form. The reality of the current situation for our clients is that this is a supply chain and procurement tool. This gives our clients the ability to sit with Halliburton in near to real time and talk about their contract structures, not only to a specific location, but say nationally or internationally, and have that data coming back in real time. As you know, working in the oil and gas side, the business units are fairly siloed. I mean, even on the drilling side, you can have a company man sitting on a rig, sitting next to another rig, and they have no idea what service providers are being used or what the costs are, and they can be next door neighbors. And so what the reality is for our clients is that this is transactional, and this is providing sort of a metadata set against all of those transactions. And let me be clear with the team here. We're talking about millions of transactions. When you're talking about Halliburton, we got billions of dollars sitting out in no man's land, waiting on payment. And so the reality is, if we can speed that up, and that is the value prop to the flip side, is let's speed it up. Let's write into the MSAs, into the contracts. If you use a solution like Engage, and we're seeing this is happening, we'll pay you net 7 and then discount us. The operators, you would think, don't want to do that. However, they really do, because if you can drive better relationships and get better trust between you and Halliburton, it works out for everybody. And we can maximize the horsepower, drive efficiencies on both sides that are unprecedented, really. I mean, I can't tell you, our case studies on the service side are as powerful as the client side, if not more powerful. We have just taken the approach to sell to the side that writes the checks. And that at the outset was a pretty heavy lift, pretty difficult to enter into that world. But now that we're in, we do see that it was kind of the right choice. We want to be on the controller side, if that makes sense.
Great. Franz, you're up.
Yeah. So can you probably the answer about the business model was in between the lines. I didn't get it fully. So who pays you out of the supply chain?
The Exxons of the world are our clients. However, we do have larger service providers that are interested in the platform as well. We have not spent a whole ton of internal capital on chasing after, basic energy services or Halliburton, which we could.
So maybe the question is simple. So the oil and gas companies are paying your bill. Yes. And the service is provided for free to all of the subcontractors that use your platform.
Okay. Exactly. Our user base. Exactly.
Okay. Yeah, great. So I had a second question, what was my original question. If you look at the oil and gas market and you look at how much service tickets and money is spent in the building of the equipment and versus the operation, and you look at the renewable market, certainly if you look at solar and wind, I can imagine there's quite a difference in that profile. Have you guys looked at that? And
yeah, we've done some homework there. The one thing I can say is, yeah, the immensity, I guess, of, you know, in the U.S. anyway, there's quite a disparity between those two numbers. But what we're excited about is that there's no difference in the workflow. We believe that we can transition this pretty easily, because you're just simply sending a different kind of tech out there to do work, or a different type of maintenance crew. You know, some of the terminology is going to be different. Some of the, you know, all the lingo, if you will. So we've tried with our application to make it kind of generic. However, oil and gas has kind of weeded its way in there over the past couple of years. But yeah, no, I mean, the industry itself is, you know, we look at this long term and we say, let's not only get in strategically and make sure that we have a presence there, but this is a growing industry on the renewable side, and it's not going to stop. And we believe the opportunity internationally is even a wider net.
okay.
Thanks, Franz. See,
Go
another one, Franz?
No, just go ahead.
Right,
So
no time.
I'm looking at this and I'm saying to myself two things. One thing is I'm in the public-private partnership business, have been for a while, and preventive maintenance is a big deal. And so my question is you know, I mean, we have all kinds of infrastructure where that's important, because you've got a client who may have aligned interests or not aligned interests, but certainly has interests aligned with making sure preventive maintenance happens. Have you thought about, Rodney? I heard you say we built it sort of agnostic to the line of business where you're in. Have you thought about the PPP industry?
We have not. However, I will kind of expand on your comment there. What we have done, at least on the maintenance side, has built out a CMMS tool that competes in the space of like an SAP Maximo. Of course, a simpler, I'll call it even a dumbed down version in our system. And the difference when you look at the deployment of capital or you know, maintenance dollars in any system is the approval levels and the priority matrices associated with getting that work done. So we have built within our system a whole ton of sort of bells and whistles with respect to that. You know, you're handed a $300 million budget for the year. You're spending it on preventative maintenance, but we have an explosion, or we have a tornado in Oklahoma that blows down our equipment. Now all of a sudden we have to shift gears, and so our clients are using Engage to redeploy their resources based on a priority matrix that is kind of set up in the system. So I do think, to your question, that there is opportunity. Again, it's the workflows are the same. However, on the maintenance side, there's just a little bit, you know, we have 5 or 6 levels of approval now versus, you know, a lot of the jobs that happen break in or just happen on a continuous basis do not need approval. They just need to take place on a recurring basis, or reoccurring basis, if you will. So yeah, I mean, I think there's opportunity there. Short answer as well.
Another question is a lot of PPP comes from Canada. So that's another thing. And I guess I don't know that a system like this has been implemented. If it has been, I'm not aware of it in PPP, and it seems like a natural fit. Then I get to the question of, okay, how many people does it take to manage this thing? You know, what's it look like from who's got to be watching the screen or whatever, you know, the reports, how time consuming is that?
Great question. And, you know,
that's to the client. I'm talking about from the client's perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And, up until March of this year, with the oil wars and the pandemic taking shape, we were not able to have, we'd call them like, we're going to give you intelligence so that you guys can make decisions at the board level with respect to your G&A costs, let's say. The reality is now the conversation is open and on the table that this is a headcount reduction tool. You can input, engage, and retool your current employees somewhere else. And we're seeing that a lot in our market right now. A lot of folks that, have been in a position and raised up to a management position are now out there swinging the hammer again with the massive layoffs and sort of the restructure of these organizations. So we are having very open and honest conversations about what Engage does with respect to implementation and rollout. This product is not, it's simple. Why we're excited at Engage is this technology is not super complicated. You don't have to be, it's pretty easy for everybody to understand that we shouldn't be doing things on paper and we should just be digitizing them. So, inserting this commercial enterprise level solution is easily understandable all the way down to, we'll call it that driver and tech level, and all the way back up into a leadership world where the millennials are taking over. A lot of the management that we work with now are, 35 to 45, and their expectation is that they're going to adopt technology. Their expectations are also that we can support it. So to your question, we put a program manager in place, a project manager in place, there's a whole ton of training in place because we have one client and 1,000 users on it, 1,000 companies, I'll say. So that is operationally a little bit of a lift for us. And that's why we're going to be looking to partners like Deloitte and McKinsey and Accenture to help us navigate sort of those uncharted waters for global and international deployment.
So I'm still not clear. I'm a guy who has a railway, and I got somebody else running it, and I want to make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. They're inspecting the ties or whatever they're doing, making sure that the PMI is going on the railway equipment. What is it that I see?
Yeah, so if you were to log in at that level, you're seeing a series of geofences for work locations that have been set up, and you're going to see people moving from their yards or wherever they're picking up the consumables or the tools or horsepower that they need to finish those jobs or those work orders. As soon as they go live on the system, we're timing them. We're timing them to that work location. We're timing them on location. We're checking their safety documentation, their permitting documentation along this journey. And you can see all that. We also have an interesting view. It's a map calendar view where you can log in and look at a map and look at your assets, across large geographical areas and see all the different projects that are going to take place in the next 24 hours, in the next 48, in the next 7 days. And open up those specific projects and go, you know what, let's bundle these. Let's maybe wait till next Monday because we're going to do an exact same work order over here. And so that's when you start driving efficiencies at kind of a pretty big brother or a bird's eye view of the entire project and entire operation.
Okay. That's somewhat different than what I thought. The other question, sorry guys, the other question is, can you custom build? As part of your thing, so in the clean tech industry, we're talking startups in a lot of places. Will you work with somebody to sort of build the platform for that application?
Yeah, absolutely. And even within our own industry, as we expand into different workflows, we're constantly, and that's when I kind of brought up the partnership deals. A lot of the spend on the client side for us is actually into our engineering team. and making sure that not only the integrations and the ties are being made on the data side, but really driving in nuances and tweaks and functionality that work better for specific workflows. So it's a constant battle that we're receiving a whole ton of fuel. So with almost all of our clients, there is some form of I guess
Customization.
they're investing in our technology as that long-term solution. So a lot of custom work being done.
Okay. Thanks.
Thanks, Joe. Oh, sorry, Steve. Joe, you're up. I see your hand up.
Yeah, Steve, another question, or not Steve, Rob, another question. I like where Steve was going with PPP. It seems like you're conscious of that. It seems like a lot of these large scale utility and scale projects are kind of PPPs. And I think it has yet to really be determined whether or not the actual, maybe the tax equity partner might be the purchaser of it and driving it, that's shoving out really the development and the operations of those solar farms or wind farms. But curious, in the other sectors that you might be considering or have considered, did you ever consider ag? And is ag just too remedial or too mature maybe for something like this?
Yeah, Joe, I think you hit it a little bit on the head. We are really interested, I guess, per the context of this conversation, in the industries that are evolving and new. I get asked a whole ton about like the DoD as well. Like what you guys have here is exactly what the military needs, and have they built it? And so I think there's a whole ton of opportunity out there. But to your point, some of the areas are maybe a little bit more mature, and because of their relationship to technology, they may have built internal systems. We just don't see a whole ton of that on the energy side. There wasn't software development groups. There were at companies obviously like XTO and ... those kind of players. But when you look at that medium level to all the way to the PE backed, they weren't investing in building their own softwares. And so when we try to step out, we're going to have to do a lot of homework on, even when you look at wind, like what has GE already done and bought? What does Siemens already have, under the covers that they're doing in this space? But the reality is that Engage can be a tool that is for those startups. And when we call them startups, we're still talking about, hundreds of millions of dollars investment or whatever it might be. But to look to technologies outside of sort of those major players. And we have that footprint on our side, as well as working with the lowest level of capital investment all the way up to, in the billions. So I think it's, I don't have a good answer, but it's probably something that we should be at least thinking about.
Rob, I have one more question. I didn't get to the answer that I was looking for. So the answer you gave me on the windows, et cetera, was that the maintenance guy at the operations company is going to be sending these guys out and checking on them and everything. I think what I was looking for is, I've got performance metrics at the executive level.
Yep.
And I need to know that you met whatever the criteria are. Have you got a window that does that?
Yeah, absolutely. Within the system we do, we have sort of some control centers on the client side. This is all data driven. If you are already leveraging tools like Spotfire or Tableau or Power BI, we're doing a lot of back-end SQL feeds directly into those systems. However, within our system, you can click into what's called Amazon QuickSight, if you're familiar with it. And a lot of the business intelligence and analytics are run through that piece of the system. And a ton of it is just copy, paste, enter new client, start filling in the data. We also do, in some cases, pick up some historical data, because of a lot of our contracts, at least on the front end, surround the ROI and the cadence around the cost for this program. I will say that Engage is not a cheap solution. We're by far the most expensive in this space, And, you know, we continue to push it based on exactly what you're asking, those analytics and the intelligence that we are creating. So it's right within the tool, but we'll also feed other systems or other tools that you're already leveraging.
Thanks.
All right, we got time for one more question, and then we got to move. So Franz, let's make it quick.
Yeah, Rob. Hey, I've been on the supplier side with rollout of such systems, certainly with GE and Siemens, more on a normal new build supplier position. And there's typically a lot of resistance from suppliers, and some are really accepting it well. What is your experience with all of the service providers who get this now pretty much, this is the way we go do it from a customer perspective, right? What's been the acceptance level and the feedback from the service providers?
It's been easy. The trick is a lot of the integrations that we do are actually on the service side as well, because you'll go work with a company the size of let's say, you know, a Basic Energy Services or something like that. They've already spent millions of dollars on data collection tools for similar applications, if you will, within their work processes. And so what we have to do is say, well, that's fine. You know, here's our client asking you to do this. We'll simply just API with that tool that you guys are already leveraging, but we want to maintain the approval cycle for the finances in Engage. So whatever those data points are, we can still go out and grab them from other tools. So the adoption level kind of depends, or I guess the pushback depends on the size of the company that we're working with. But right now, you know, candidly, they don't have a choice. Everybody is going bankrupt, and the reality is, if an operator says you need to do something to transact, you're just going to say, how high? Where do I need to jump? And so right now we have zero to no pushback. However, it'll be interesting to see how that translates into sort of the renewable side.
Yep, good, thanks.
Hey, Joe, did you have anything else? Because we have a couple more minutes. We're waiting for the other speaker to get situated. So if you had anything else you wanted to ask. Sorry, not Joe,
Yeah.
Steve. I know you were probing.
No, I was going to hope Joe would jump in and you get where I'm going with that window thing, Joe? No.
Short answer, no.
Okay. I'm saying,
But
you know,
I do have another
you
question.
have to think through your preventive maintenance regime, and B, the guy who owns the project eventually is some guy at a public sector entity or whatever, and he wants to know, did you meet those performance criteria, metrics, and he wants a window that does that. And yeah.
Oh, sure. I mean, yeah, from approving, like getting a master service agreement with a number of subcontractors that may provide maintenance, yeah, you'd be able to keep tabs on whether or not these guys are meeting or exceeding your expectations of them as subcontractors maintaining your facility, for sure, via a platform like this.
It's pretty easy to identify your A players within a matter of weeks almost on a platform like this. And then have the courageous conversations with the underperformers and say, look, you know, we're not saying that we need to pull this contract. We're saying you need to step up to the plate, and we're only going to work with folks that are, you know, running with integrity and running efficiently. And we see that across our metadata on all levels, even within service companies, from one basin to the next or one area to the next. There can be very apparent differences in operationally how you know, they're carrying out those maintenance activities or whatever type of service they're providing.
So what is and guys, stop me when, you know, I can go on.
Yeah, I think, well, I might have to stop you now, but go real quick.
Just let me know, man. So with a nascent industry, you know, what's your proposition on developing the software to, you know, do the maintenance regime, et cetera, et cetera? And I may only be focused on a portion of what you do, but that's what I'm thinking about.
I think a first step would be finding, you know, a good first partner, somebody who is looking to partner with, you know, some like us, and really absorb that agile methodology, and help us develop exactly what that workflow entails and exactly what data needs to be captured to drive as much into the efficiency side as possible. So, you know, it's just more about finding either a client or a partner that can help us, really.
Right. Yeah. And
right.
actually, in
So-
that case, that exercise is probably as good for the people that are using it as it is for you.
right.
If they can't do that.
All right. Awesome dialogue. I think you two ought to follow up. I'm sure Steve, sounds like there's a potential to partner there. Mike, any parting thoughts? And Rob, this has been a great talk to help
thanks,
us
Rob.
get our day going.
What's the best way to get through to you for the group, Rob? Email or LinkedIn, or what would you like?
Yeah, whichever. You know, I'm absorbed in all those tools. So yeah, reach out to me on LinkedIn or shoot me a quick note, text me, send me a birthday card. Happy to chat with everybody. Thank you all for your time, and excited to, like I said, extend my network a little bit here.
Yeah, I'll tee up the question of what ideas the group has for you later in the day in one of our jam sessions, and we'll get that back to you.
Awesome. Appreciate it, Mike. Thank you for your help here.
All right.